Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Scottish beer scene, but they have grown to be one of the most respected craft breweries in the country today. It's most definitely fair to say that this brewery are best known for their different New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, and we've had many nice examples of those on the channel. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I know these guys can do very well, and the beer itself is one that was released a good couple of years ago now actually, and it's been rebrewed a few times, but I've finally gotten back to Scotland at a time when one of the rebrews has been released. So this is one I've wanted to review for quite some time, and I'm really looking forward to trying this one because I know this beer is supposed to be very, very nice. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head through to Glasgow once again, Yoker to be precise, and that means that we're going to take a look at another beer from Overtone Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Ooft. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this one is from their Lost in Translation series. So the ones that have these Scottish words as their names are all from the Lost in Translation series. And for those of you watching abroad, when you say Ooft, that is just like, you know, WTF, what the hell, you know, all these kind of things. It's a term of exclamation, if we can put it like that. But yeah, Ooft is what you say when something is pretty cool, actually. Ooft, that's a beast, you know. Kind of things like that. But yeah, as we said, 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. And this is one of their, I guess you could call this the classic one. Recently they also had the Sabroft as well, which I think is the same recipe, just brewed with Sabro. But this is all Citra, this one. So I get the feeling that this beer might be one of these ones that, you know, doesn't do anything surprising, but it's just very, very well done because it has a pretty high rating. I think it's 4.2. on Untappd that this one has. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Overtone Brewing Company in the past, and I will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, usually when I'm at home in the motherland of Scotland. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Overtone Brewing then. So Overtone Brewing, as I've told you already, are based through in Glasgow, and the company was founded back in 2017 by Bo Wang, who is originally from Beijing in China. So he had been a home brewer for a number of years before he founded the brewery, and his beers went down very well, and so he decided to turn commercial. But the name Overtone is taken from his love of techno music. So Bo hired Dan Miller, who's from New Hampshire, over in New England in the northeast of the US, to come in as his head brewer. And he had previously worked as a head chef, but he'd also worked as a brewer in England, New York, and also in Scotland for 6 Degrees North, who are a Belgian style brewery, brewing their beers in Lawrencekirk, but mainly based in the northeast of Scotland. Do check those guys out because they've got some nice beers as well. But also involved at the brewery is Martin Conahan, who had worked in the craft beer scene in New Zealand for a number of years. He takes part in the brewing, but also does a number of other things too. And they've also got Charlie working with them as well these days. But the brewery itself can be found in the New Albion Industrial Estate in Yoker near Renfrew and Clydebank. And they began operations back in 2018. So the brewery doesn't have a kind of fixed range as such, and so they're always brewing different beers. But as of May 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced over 60 different kinds of beer. And yeah, like I said to you earlier, these guys are best known for their different kinds of hazy beers, you know, the pale ales, the IPAs, the double IPAs, and so on. They've been doing some imperial stouts recently, and they have also been experimenting a little bit with some sour beers. So I do need to make sure I review one of the sours for you, and they've brewed a few lagers and things like that as well. At the moment they've got their Munich lager, which I'll need to see about getting a hold of at some stage. But yeah, as I say, mainly known for their New England Hazy IPAs. I've had a very good West Coast IPA from them in the past. That was called Kanye West, if I remember right. So yeah, these guys are a very, very capable brewery, whatever style it is they decide to try. But yeah, that is everything I can tell you about Overtone Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So as you can see, I'll just wipe the condensation off this one. As you can see, the artwork on this one is very typical of Overtone. It's absolutely lovely. Yeah, looks very good. So there you can see on the side, you always get this on the Overtone cans, the Overtone and then the name underneath. It's a 440ml can, plain silver top on this one, of course, and it tells you a wee bit about the beer on the back here. So this one says, Ooft, the sound made when impressed by something. Showcasing the Citra hop pellet and in incognito form, this is a full-bodied, hop-forward beer with huge citrus and tropical fruit flavours. So like I said to you earlier, this one is all Citra. So yeah, you know, incognito, I don't know if that's the same for the the hop extract, if you like. But yeah, this one has, from what I understand, it has leaf. It just says Citra pellets and incognito, but the original one I remember had, you know, full cones and things in it as well. So yeah, this has got Citra in all different forms, and that just gives you a more kind of rounded flavour actually. But yeah, like we said earlier, this one is an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA, whatever you want to call it, and I'm sure this one will be nice. We've had many nice beers in this style category before from Overtone, and they keep rebrewing this one, so, you know, we can deduce that it's going to be pretty good. So yeah, let's crack this one open then and see how we go. The Ooft from Overtone. Yeah, that's one of the things that's always quite interesting with these Scottish words that we have as well, because there's quite a few different ways. There are quite a few different ways to spell these things, because whenever I write Ooft, I always write it O-A-F-T. And I think most of my friends would as well, so I don't know if it kind of varies from regarding where you are. In Scotland, and of course, if the Glaswegians have got a whole kind of thing of their own. There's a few different things over on the east coast as well, and up in the north, you know, up in Aberdeen and Inverness and things, they've got their own stuff going on too, which is kind of crazy. So there's a whole host of different slangs in different places in Scotland, just so those of you watching abroad have an idea about that. Voice is a bit strange today, I think. But yeah, anyway. So this one's poured, as you can see, pretty much as you would expect from a New England IPA of any description. So not got much head on this one actually, but I think I poured it very lightly, to be honest with you. But you can see it poured with about a third of a finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That has faded away to just be a very kind of thin foamy layer, but there's a nice thicker foamy ring around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but the head has incidentally just faded away to be a really nice kind of thin foamy layer. But yeah, appearance wise, I would describe this one as being a very kind of pale yellow. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of a kind of pineapple juice. I always like comparing these New England IPAs to different kinds of fruit juices because that's just what their appearance reminds me of. So this one is very much like a kind of pineapple juice or something like that. But yeah, remember the colour of these beers depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will also affect the colour of the beer as well. But when it comes to New England IPAs, you don't often have to care about that, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, I would say this one's quite a nice bright yellow, this one, kind of like a pineapple juice. It looks a little bit darker, I think, on the camera than it actually is to the naked eye. It's a bit paler to the naked eye, I think. But yeah, not much in the way of visible carbonation, just 1 or 2 little bubbles down here, and you can see 1 or 2 going up toward the bottom of that head there. But yeah, level of haze in this beer. It's leaning toward that soupy, gloopy end of the spectrum. It's not the soupiest and gloopiest of beers that I've seen, but it's getting toward that side of things. So remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, the wheat content, and the yeast that you use. You know, there's not really a rule about, you know, as you go further up the alcohol scale, it should be more hazy because you've got more oat and wheat. It can vary from brewery to brewery and recipe to recipe, so just keep that in mind. But in terms of what you would expect from a New England, hazy double IPA, this one pretty much looks the part, should we say? So yeah, nothing else we really need to say about the appearance of this beer. Let's have a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Very curious about this beer. As I say, one I've wanted to try for quite some time. Oh yeah, that's very, very nice. Nothing surprising, as I say, but what I was expecting from this beer is one that is just really, really well done. There's so many hazy IPAs out there these days, but it's kind of difficult for them to stand out. But this one, you can tell this is just really, really nicely done. Yeah. So, in terms of the just a first impression of this beer, you can smell with this one big kind of creamy backbone to it, lovely big fresh juicy fruity notes, and then the green component for me is leaning toward the floral side of things. As I've said to you many a time on the channel, I think there's 6 different elements to a New England IPA, so they can be kind of they can be sort of farmhousey and yeasty, they can be rye leaning and grainy. And those 2 elements are a bit more common in American brewed IPAs, you know, Alchemist and things like that. But they can be wheaty and bitey, such as Trillium, oaty and creamy, such as Treehouse. You also get quite a bit of barley malt bread, and they can be quite sweet. And you'll often get various different elements of these 6 that I've mentioned. The ones I think that we get in Europe tend to be more based on the sort of wheaty and oaty side of things, the sort of Trillium, Treehouse. Most of the New England IPAs we get over here are like that, but you can find other ones that are a little bit different. But yeah, this one for me, it comes across as being very oaty and creamy, and it's just got this lovely juicy note out to it that you can smell the Citra in this right away. So Citra, of course, American hop, 14% alpha acid, big juicy mango notes, and you've also got that big lemony limey kind of citrusy character with it as well. So yeah, few things. Definitely a few things worth pointing out with Citra hop, but you can smell that straight away in this one. But let's break the aroma of this beer down a little bit more for you and describe it a wee bit more in depth. So, yeah. Aroma wise then, for me, the backbone of this beer, you can just tell this one is very, very fresh because straight away you get this big oaty kind of creamy character. But yeah, definitely a little bit of a kind of how do we say, there's definitely a wee bit of a kind of bread crusty sort of thing. You get that very fresh kind of white bread hedgehog roll. You can absolutely smell a little bit of that. There's a little bit of a kind of crisp but still fluffy fresh white bread, and then you've also got you can smell a little bit of the wheat in this one. And in fairness, at the back of the nose, if you take the aroma of this beer in like really deeply, it's got a little bit of that kind of wheaty bitiness there, but the wheat is acting more as a kind of smoothening agent in this beer. So yeah, so this one is this is really, really nice. The last IPA that I had from these guys, was it called Broken Clouds? The blue one, I think it was called Broken Clouds, but that was a triple IPA. So this one for me is really, it smells a lot more creamy and things like that. It's really, really nice. But as I say, you've got that lovely my voice is going today, guys, I apologise. So you've got that, as I say, you've got that little bit of bread crust. You can smell the soft white bready layer from the barley malt, a bit of wheat on top, and a bit of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose there. But it goes together really, really nicely, this one. On top of that, though, you've got these big kind of oaty, creamy notes. So absolutely, you can smell it's almost got a little bit of a kind of porridgey aroma to it, or just, you know, when you put oats and then you just put milk in it, that's what it really smells like, this beer. It does, I do actually get a little bit of sweetness out of this one. So you've got that, yeah. So you've got that, how do you say, you do get a little bit of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. It's kind of interesting that, because in some of the more old school beers, and this is an older brew, could we say, from Overtone, although they probably will have tweaked it. Quite often in some of these older IPAs, you don't get that element of sweetness. The sweetness, I think, is something that's come in a little bit more recently. I think back to, you know, the Amazing Haze from Stigberg, it's the O.O. Narangi, these kind of old school Swedish IPAs that I was drinking. This one really reminds me of those a little bit. It does have a little element of that Werther's Original sweetness, but yeah, it has a little bit of that Werther's Original sweetness, but not overly much, if that makes sense. Yeah. So, yeah, but definitely the oaty creamy notes in this are very, very nice. I think that's everything we need to say about the malty part of the beer. Let's move on to the hoppy side of things. So yeah, for me, the green component, it really leans toward that big floral note. And remember, with New England, with IPAs, generally speaking, there are 3 different types of hoppings. Early edition hopping within the first hour of the wort boil, that's mainly what gives you your bitterness. The late edition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, typically IPAs have a 90-minute wort boil, but not always. That gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. And you've got dry hopping, which is all about the flavour and aroma. New England IPAs tend to use late and dry hopping, and then West Coast IPAs will use early edition hopping as well as those two. So yeah, with this one you can tell that this, I think, mainly relies on late edition and dry hopping, but of course the Incognito, I think Incognito is like the lupulin oil, I'm not 100% sure, I do need to check that. But yeah, with this one, you can tell the green component is quite deep, and I think it's the oils, the Incognito, that's doing that, to be honest with you. But yeah, you can smell there's a teeny little bit of earthiness in the green component here, but I would say not a lot. This one really is leaning toward the floral aromatic side of things. It's got a nice depth to it, but at the same time it's quite bright. But as you always get with Citra, at the front of the nose you're also getting this kind of bright, zesty, grassy sort of thing. So yeah, quite a little bit of that coming out too. I'm also noticing that the more I smell of this beer, the creamier the oats become, but you do get a little touch of dryness out of them. Remember, oats are an indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is. The creamier the beer smells, the more fresh your beer is going to be. But yeah, nice bit of a kind of zesty, grassy character in there. But on the fruity side of things, lots of lovely big juicy mango. I do get a wee touch of passion fruit in there. You've got some of the drier notes like an apricot, a little bit of pineapple, of course, and then absolutely a bit of that more kind of lemony character that you would expect to Citra. Citra's interesting because it behaves quite differently in West Coast IPAs. In West Coast IPAs you get less of the lemon lime thing, but you get more of a kind of gooseberry lychee kind of note out of it. So Citra's one of a few hops where you can single hop a beer and it doesn't feel like it's missing anything. But yeah, the aroma out of this one, as I say, big mangoes, a little bit of apricot and pineapple, I think. Maybe more apricot than pineapple. The pineapple's very minimal. But then you've also got just that wee bit of passion fruit in there. But a beautiful smelling beer, this one. It's absolutely lovely. But I wouldn't expect anything else from Overtone. But I think that covers everything that we really need to say about the aroma of this beer. But as I always say, take a wee bit of time to just ponder over that aroma before you get stuck into the beer. But yeah, let's try this one then. So this is the Ooft, an 8% New England hazy imperial double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Overtone Brewing Company in Yoker in Glasgow. One that I've wanted to try for quite a while. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that's really nice. This one, first impression of this, it's actually quite thick. It's got a good creaminess to it, but it feels quite thick in that creaminess. The green component is not quite as pronounced as I thought it was going to be, but it's also just got a lovely juicy note to it. This is one of these beers where you can say, oh, it's a juice bomb. You know, I think it is one of those. Yeah, this is another solid beer from Overtone, this one, but it definitely has a little bit of that kind of you know, old school vibe where these beers didn't have the sweet component to them. So yeah, this is very nice. Just big thumbs up to Overtone once again. But to be honest, didn't expect anything less. I couldn't tell you how many Overtone beers we've reviewed on the channel now, but it must be, you know, it must be about 20, something like that. And I just like trying these. I like trying the new beers from Overtone whenever I come home. Yeah, this one is pretty damn good, I have to say. Yeah, nothing, as I said earlier, nothing surprising about this beer, but it's just very, very well done. So let's break this down for you and describe it a wee bit more in depth, as we always do. Start with the middle third of the palate, as usual. So, yeah, on that middle third of the palate then, backbone of the beer, you do get a little bit, there's a little touch of like a Jacob's cream cracker thing, you know, like that fresh edge of a hedgehog roll. You do get a little bit of that in there. But very quickly, on top of that, you can feel there's quite a dense layer of that fresh white bread, you know. You can feel that it's got a little bit of kind of, almost kind of crisp graininess to it in a sense, so it's got a little bit of that. But yeah, you can feel the bread crust, a little bit of the Jacob's cream cracker, and it does, you get a little bit more of the cracker, I think, further forward on that middle third of the palate. But then on top of that, as I say, you've got that quite dense, fluffy, fresh white bread layer coming out of it. So yeah, the way that that goes together is quite nice in this one. It's interesting because that slight dryness you get out of the beer comes out a wee bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. Now, the one thing that I'm getting from this beer, having taken a few sips of it, I think the wheat is a bit more prominent in this than the aroma would have you believe. So I think, you know, on top of the yeah, on top of that, on top of that kind of barley malt bready layer, you can feel the wheat, and the wheat thickens out this beer a hell of a lot. Actually, you can feel that. But then the wheat, you can feel very much that the wheat and the oaty layers are almost right mixed together in this one. That's another indicator of the freshness of this one, because the oats are so creamy, as I mentioned earlier. You can take that. So yeah, you can feel the wheat sitting on top of that kind of more barley malt bready layer and sort of making a bridge between the two. But yeah, on top of the wheaty layer, you've got that big oaty kind of, you've got that big oaty creaminess in there, and that I think goes together really well. The oats in this one are that thick and that creamy. It's almost like you've got a bit of kind of porridge in the middle of your palate. Actually, it's really interesting. So yeah, you can feel down the sort of middle trench of your tongue, the middle line of your tongue, you feel that big, big oaty creaminess there. And as you go out toward the edge of your palate, it does get a wee bit drier, but it still has that fresh kind of wetness that you would expect of. It still has that kind of fresh wetness that you would expect of a kind of fresh New England IPA. I really, as I say, I really like how this goes together. So, yeah, this is awesome. This is a pretty damn a pretty damn nice beer. I think my voice is getting back to normal actually, which is nice. Yeah, the malty side of things in this is really nice. Other than that, the only other thing I can think to say on top of the oaty layer in this beer, you do get like a little circle. And it's a bit like a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of thing. In the dead centre of your palate, you do get this kind of Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. There is a wee bit of that going on in this beer. But then as you go further out, toward the edge of the palate there, it's got a little bit more of that kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing to it. So yeah, the way that kind of comes out in this was nice. This beer does have a very light element of sweetness to it, but to me this is far more leaning toward that more old school kind of bready type New England IPA, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think there's nothing else we really need to say about the middle third of the palate. So let's go on to the back third of your palate then. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up in there. You can feel that. But then the base of the back third of the palate, the base of the back third of the palate, you get a bit more kind of graininess out of the bread crust. The barley malt bread layer is a little bit taller, and you can feel it's a bit more grainy, but I'm getting a bit more wheaty bitiness out of this beer. Like on top of that bready layer, there's a good little bit of a more wheaty, bitey character for this one. So yeah. So yeah, you can feel. Yeah, I do like this. You know, the more that you drink of this beer, the more wheaty and bitey it becomes. As I said, that was the kind of one surprise about this beer from flavour to aroma was that the wheat was that little bit more kind of prominent, if you like. So I do get that out of this one. So yeah, a little bit more of a kind of wheaty, bitey sort of vibe to this beer. And yeah, I do like that. So on top of the wheaty side of the beer, you get that kind of, you can feel the yeasty side of it. So there's a bit more of a dense white bready sort of thing to this one. Yeah, you've got that more dense white bready sort of thing. And then around that, you get a little bit of a kind of crackery, farmhousey type vibe. So the yeasty notes are more prominent on the back third of the palate, and they linger there into the aftertaste as well. But on top of the, yeah, on that back, as I say, on that back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is definitely a little bit taller. So yeah, you can feel that nice kind of tall. Oh, I'm getting gas off this beer now. So yeah, you can feel the back third of your palate. The flavour is definitely taller. As you come forward into the middle third of the palate, the flavour just condenses down and squashes together a little bit. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty side of the beer. On the hoppy side of things, back corners of the palate, you get a little touch of earthiness there, but not a lot. As you move further forward, you've got that nice big floral aromatic note to this one. It's got a really nice bit of deep floral aromaticity, but it's also a little bit kind of, it's also got a good little bit of kind of brightness to it at the same time. I really like how that goes together. But as I say, I think the depth that you get on this is probably from the Incognito, which, if I'm not mistaken, is lupulin oil. But correct me on that in the comment section below if you know better. But yeah, nice kind of deep floral aromaticity to it. But yeah, round the front curve of the palate, you do get a little bit of a lighter grassy note, and it's actually quite wet on the grassy side of things. So the green component is quite nice. I'd say overall it's quite wet, but it's also got a little bit of that oily character to it as well. But let's focus on the front third of your palate then. I think that's everything we need to say about the green component. Border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there. Then the base of the beer is more, you get a little bit of bread crust, but you also get that very smooth white bready kind of note out of it. Then on top of that, you get that nice big oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So toward the back of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit of a more kind of passion fruity sort of thing. Then as you move forward, it's more of a kind of mango character that you get with this one. So yeah, a little bit of passion fruit, a little bit of mango, and you know, the mango is really big and really ripe and juicy in this one. As you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, you've got a wee bit of a kind of pineapple. You've got a little bit of a kind of pineapple and a wee touch of apricot, a wee bit of that dry apricot-y sort of thing in this one too. But then as you move further forward, the apricot kind of spreads forward, I think, into the front half of that front third of your palate. But then as you reach the very kind of front tip of your tongue, you're starting to get the more lemony, limey notes that you would expect of Citra. So yeah, that goes together really, really nicely in this beer, in my opinion. Yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the fruity side of this beer. It's really nice, but the fruity side of it is very, very kind of soft and juicy. But yeah, I mean, as I've said, as I was expecting with this one, this is just a really nicely done New England double IPA. It doesn't do anything surprising, but it's just really well crafted, and you can't ask for much more than that these days, to be quite honest with you. Yeah. So in terms of the mouthfeel then, just to round off this review. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, for me, this one, I'd say it's kind of top end to mid-bodied, bottom end to full-bodied. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a lovely creaminess to it, but at the same time, the beer almost has a little bit of slickness, which I quite like. So yeah, it's quite a clean but still quite slick and slightly creamy beer, this one. I like how that goes together, absolutely. In terms of IBUs, I think this is a fairly standard, 30 or 40 IBU beer. It is a double IPA, so I'd be tempted to say it's 40. It does have a wee bit more bitterness, and that comes out a little bit further into the aftertaste. There's a wee touch of bread crust in there. You've got that big oaty, you do have that big kind of oaty, creamy backbone to this one, so the malt base has a real creaminess to it. A little touch of sweetness as well, so say probably a little bit of golden promise or something in this one, giving you those slightly biscuity notes that we picked up earlier. But yeah, It's really nice in that sense, not so much of a big sweet element, and the fruity side of it is mainly leaning towards the tropical side of things, but it's got a lovely big kind of fruity, juicy character to it, this beer. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about this beer. An absolutely solid New England IPA from Overtone. Not surprised that this is their kind of signature style, if you like. Just a beautiful beer. But definitely glad that I finally got around, or got the chance, I should say, to review Ooft here on the channel. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed my take on this one as well, but let's leave it at that. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Overtone, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the near future. But in the meantime, check out my social media, check out Overtone's social media, and I'll catch you guys on the next review. This was the Ooft, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Overtone Brewing Company in Yoker in Glasgow. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.